There's a stretch of road just outside of Ellensburg, Washington, where the fog never seems to lift. Locals call it Lantern Mile. No one can quite agree where it begins or ends, but everyone in town knows the same warning. Don't stop if you see a man with a lantern, ever. Maggie Hollis, a 48-year-old divorcee trying to start fresh, didn't know the warning. She was new in town, had just rented a weathered little house on the edge of some forgotten farmland. One night, coming back from a job interview, her GPS rerouted her through an unfamiliar road. A winding stretch that slithered through the trees like it wasn't supposed to be there. The trees leaned in like they were eavesdropping. The kind of woods that felt older than the town itself. The fog was too thick to see more than a few feet ahead. Her headlights sliced through the haze like dull knives. Then, in the distance, something moved. A flicker of light. A person. Her foot hovered over the brake. He was standing right in the middle of the road. A man, tall and still, holding a lantern in his right hand. His face was hidden under a wide-brimmed hat, but the way he tilted his head as she approached made her stomach knot. She slowed down, unsure whether to stop or swerve. He didn't move. As the car rolled closer, Maggie could see the flicker of the lantern wasn't steady. It pulsed like a heartbeat. The fog swirled unnaturally around him. Her hands tightened on the wheel. "What the hell?" she whispered, unsure if he needed help or was just part of some cruel joke. Then she blinked. Just as her car was about to pass him, the man vanished, not stepped aside, not ran off, vanished. Maggie let out a short scream, swerving slightly, her tires thudding against the gravel shoulder. She glanced in her rearview mirror. Nothing, just endless fog and empty road. Her heart thundered as she gripped the wheel. "Did I just imagine that?" she muttered to herself. The GPS stuttered and then shut down completely. Great. Now she was alone, lost and shaken, with only trees and silence pressing in from all sides. She turned the radio on to drown out her thoughts. Static. She flipped stations. More static. Then, briefly, a whisper. "He saw you." She yelped and turned the radio off, pulling over to catch her breath. Her hands were trembling. "This town is weird," she muttered. "Real weird." She got home eventually, though she couldn't remember the turns. Her house looked different in the mist. Older. She could have sworn the front porch hadn't sagged like that before. Even the doorknob felt colder in her hand. Her porch light flickered like it was trying to warn her away. Inside, she tried to distract herself, lit a fire, made tea, turned on the radio, but a smell drifted through the vents, something like oil and dirt. And from the corner of her eye, in the reflection of the window, she thought she saw the faint orange glow of a lantern behind her. She turned. No one there. The fire crackled louder than normal. The shadows stretched a bit too far. Even the tea tasted metallic. She left every light on that night. Her bedroom door stayed open, but none of it helped. Not really. That night she dreamed of the man again, but it wasn't really a dream. She knew it wasn't. She was lying in bed, unable to move. Her eyes wide open as the sound of footsteps scraped across the wooden floor. A dim orange glow appeared under her bedroom door. He was there. She couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. He stood on the other side of the door for what felt like hours, just standing. Then the light faded, and the footsteps walked away. She lay there all night, soaked in sweat, afraid to even blink. When morning came, the door was ajar by just a sliver more than she remembered. On the floor, muddy footprints, bare, wide, leading away from her bed. The next day she asked around, She described the man with the lantern to a woman at the gas station. The woman froze, her face draining of color. "You need to leave," she said. "Tonight, before dark." Maggie pressed her, and the woman whispered, "We don't say his name, but he shows up when people don't belong. He follows you, haunts you, and he never comes just once." Another man nearby, eavesdropping, chimed in. "Used to be a preacher, went mad, lit the church on fire with the congregation still inside. They say his soul is stuck in the fog, judging travelers, especially newcomers." Maggie packed that night, but it was already too late. She zipped her last bag. The lights in the house dimmed and then died completely. The fog outside pressed against the windows like a living thing, and then she heard it. Metal scraping against wood. The front door creaking open. She grabbed her phone, the flashlight barely piercing the darkness. She crept down the hallway. There, standing in her living room, was the man, hat low, lantern glowing, and this time he lifted his head. A deep hum filled the room. Her ears rang as the temperature dropped. The flames in the fireplace froze, literally froze, frozen mid-flicker. Her phone flickered and died in her hand, and then she heard a whisper coming from inside the lantern itself. There was no face, just a black hollow where his features should have been. And the light inside the lantern flickered like it was alive, pulsing, throbbing, calling her closer. She backed away, but her legs didn't respond right. It was like the floor was tilting toward him. She turned and ran, out the back through the trees, stumbling in the fog. But wherever she ran, he was already there. The lantern bobbed through the mist beside her like it had always been waiting. Sometimes it was in front of her, sometimes behind. Once, she swore she saw it floating above her. She screamed for help, but the sound didn't carry. The fog swallowed it whole. Then she saw something new. Other lights. Faint, flickering, all around. Dozens of lanterns, each one pulsing in unison, like a heartbeat shared by many. They found her car the next morning. Doors wide open. Engine still warm, no sign of Maggie. But some say if you drive that stretch of road alone at night, you might still see her, wandering in the fog, mouth open in a silent scream, chased by a flickering light that never goes out. Others say she became one of them, that now there are two lanterns glowing in the dark, one steadier, one more frantic, and sometimes, if you're really quiet, you can hear her voice calling out, begging you to run, but it's already too late by then. It started with a phone call. At 7:13 a.m., Daniel Mercer received the news that would pull him back to a place he had desperately tried to forget. The voice on the line was that of a lawyer from a small town in Vermont, informing him of his Aunt Margaret's sudden passing and the inheritance she'd left behind. A creaky old Victorian house nestled on the edge of Hemsdale Forest. Daniel hadn't spoken to Aunt Margaret in over 20 years. She was a recluse, known for her obsession with silence and her refusal to let anyone into the house. Rumors swirled around the town about voices that echoed from the walls of her home and the strange symbols she painted on the window frames. Daniel had always dismissed them as small-town folklore, fueled by boredom. But something about the lawyer's voice, the way he paused before mentioning the house, made Daniel uneasy. He didn't want the house, but after losing his job and his marriage falling apart, he saw it as a fresh start, a desperate one. He packed his things and drove north, the road winding tighter with every mile, the sky greyer with every passing hour. The silence on the road felt almost supernatural, the kind of quiet that swallowed even the sound of your own thoughts. The house stood exactly as he remembered from his childhood, a towering structure with peeling paint, broken shutters, and a crooked iron gate that creaked in protest when pushed. The air around it felt thick, almost pressing in on him. Inside, the smell of old wood, dust, and something faintly sour greeted him. The furniture was draped in white sheets, and everything seemed untouched, like a museum of Margaret's final years. Daniel spent the first day cleaning and opening windows, trying to dispel the oppressive atmosphere. At dusk, as he sat on the front steps sipping a coffee, he noticed something odd. Despite the open windows, the inside of the house was eerily silent. No wind, no rustling trees, no creaking floorboards, just silence. That night, as he lay in bed, he heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible whispering. Not words exactly, but the cadence of speech. It seemed to come from the walls. The sound was fleeting, but it was enough to make him sit up in bed, holding his breath. The night dragged on, each creak of the old house magnified by the silence. At one point, he thought he heard footsteps on the floor above him. He stayed frozen, staring at the ceiling, until sleep eventually took him like a trapdoor beneath his body. He bolted upright, heart pounding. He told himself it was the pipes, the wind, or even his own mind playing tricks after a long day. But the next night, it returned, louder, clearer, still not understandable, but definitely real. A faint chorus of breathy murmurs that faded the moment he tried to follow them. He pressed his ear against the wall near the bed. His skin prickled. There was a voice, a woman's voice, hissing something low and rhythmic. Daniel couldn't sleep. He walked the halls with a flashlight, stopping every few feet to listen. Once, just once, he thought he saw a shadow move across the end of the hallway. Not walk, glide. The next morning he found scratches on the inside of his bedroom door. 3 long gouges, as if someone or something had clawed at it in the night. He checked every lock, every window. Nothing had been broken into. He set up baby monitors in different rooms, hoping to capture the sounds or prove to himself it was nothing. But every time he played them back, the result was the same. Low whispers, giggles, even his name spoken in tones that were definitely not his own. In the attic, buried beneath a trunk of old quilts and photo albums, he found it. A leather-bound journal with Margaret's initials. Inside, her handwriting became increasingly erratic over time. The entries started innocently. Heard a soft hum near the fireplace today, but pages later, they speak when I'm not looking. They whisper secrets I should never know. And finally, the walls are alive. They feed on sound. They hate the silence. Daniel read until the sun rose. The final entry was smudged and barely legible. I can no longer tell my thoughts from theirs. I locked the whispers in with me. No one else must hear. That line chilled him more than any sound. If the whispers were real, if they wanted to be heard, what did it mean that she had kept them trapped? The journal hinted that Margaret had once tried to leave the house too, but each time, the voices would follow her. They would echo through hotel walls, through phone calls, even through the static of the radio. The house, it seemed, wasn't just haunted, it was hungry. Desperate, Daniel called the lawyer, asking if there had been any strange reports about the house. The man hesitated, then confessed. Your aunt requested the house never be disturbed. She said it was a vessel, that it remembers everything said inside it, that voices linger there, waiting to be heard again. That night, Daniel set up a recording device. He left it running in the living room, where the whispers had grown loudest. The next morning, he played it back. At first, just white noise, then a faint sobbing, then a voice, his aunt's voice. "You shouldn't have come." Daniel dropped the device. His hands trembled. The voice was unmistakable. It was her. And it was recent. That night, the whispers became clearer. They said his name. The voices began repeating things Daniel had said out loud earlier in the day. His own words thrown back at him, warped and distorted. He started to lose track of what he had said and what he had only heard. Conversations looped. Reality bent. Daniel decided to leave. He packed his car and slammed the front door. As he turned the ignition, nothing happened. Dead. The battery had been fine the day before. He rushed inside to call for help, but the phone line was dead too. Even his cell phone, which had worked intermittently in the area, was now black. The house stood silent until nightfall. They spoke again, louder than ever. Not a whisper. Voices. Dozens of them. Some cried. Some laughed. Some screamed. They called to him, begged him, cursed him. He tried blocking his ears, but the voices were inside his head now. And then, from the hallway, a soft thud of footsteps. Slow, measured, coming closer. The air in the house grew heavy, electric. Light bulbs flickered and burst. The mirrors fogged up, not from heat, but from breath. His breath or someone else's. On the largest mirror, a handprint formed, then another, then dozens, pressing from the inside. He locked himself in the attic, clutching Margaret's journal. The whispers surged through the walls like a wave, making the old wood groan. He flipped to the last page, and in a moment of sheer desperation, began reading aloud the final words. "I seal you in. I silence your hunger. I end your echo." The voices shrieked. A thunderous boom shook the house. Then, nothing. Silence. Not peaceful silence, but a hollow, wrong kind of quiet. Daniel felt a presence behind him. He turned. It was Margaret, pale, hollow-eyed, whispering. Her mouth didn't move, but the words, they kept coming. The journal slipped from his fingers. He couldn't move, couldn't scream. And in that moment, he understood. He hadn't ended the echo. He had joined it. Now, if you walk by the house at night, some say you can hear a man's voice pleading, whispering, warning. Don't listen. Don't listen. "You're hearing things again, Laura. Maybe it's the pipes," Mark said, not looking up from his tablet, but Laura knew what she heard. It was 2:46 a.m. when the first whisper slid beneath their bedroom door, like a draft of winter air. She sat upright in bed, clutching the covers as her breath caught in her throat. It hadn't been the creak of a settling house. No, this was a voice. Faint, almost apologetic, like a child confessing something in the dark. The house, a 1920s craftsman they had purchased just 2 months ago in the quiet suburbs of Brookfield, had seemed perfect, spacious, affordable, and strangely unlisted for nearly a year before they found it. A stroke of luck, Mark had called it. But now, luck tasted bitter. Laura rose from bed and stepped cautiously into the hallway. Every light was off. Every shadow stretched long and unnatural, as if the walls themselves bent to eavesdrop. The whisper had sounded young, feminine, but distant, from somewhere deeper in the house. She tiptoed toward the nursery, the one they hadn't furnished yet, and stood frozen outside its door. The doorknob was ice cold. The next night, Laura stayed awake intentionally. Mark snored beside her, peacefully unaware, her ears strained in the silence. Then it came, a soft, almost tender whisper. "Are you alone?" It came from the air vent near the floor. Her skin prickled. She threw the covers off and crawled toward it, pressing her ear close. Nothing. Silence. Then, ever so faintly, a breath, followed by a low humming, like a lullaby sung by someone long forgotten. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Laura sat on the porch with a steaming cup of coffee, eyes red, hands trembling. She watched a neighbor, an older woman walking a dog, and waved. The woman nodded politely, but didn't smile, didn't stop. Laura noticed the hesitation in her step as she passed their yard, like someone walking past a cemetery. She looked back at the house. Something about the windows seemed wrong, like they were watching her. Mark agreed to check the vents the next day. Nothing. He laughed it off, but Laura noticed the way his eyes lingered on the hallway, the way he paused before opening doors. That night, they slept with a white noise machine, but white noise doesn't drown out the dead. At 3:11 a.m., the whisper came again, clearer this time. "She doesn't see me, but you do." Laura jerked awake, her eyes scanning the dim room. Her gaze caught something, a shadow, just behind the curtain. She threw it open. Nothing. Yet the room felt occupied. Mark stirred. "What are you doing?" he mumbled. "Didn't you hear it?" "Hear what?" he said, annoyed. "You've got to stop this, Laura." But the shadow behind the curtain had looked real. It had shape, movement, purpose. The whispers became bolder. They came during the day now, from inside closets, beneath the floorboards, behind mirrors. Laura began to record everything. Her phone picked up nothing but static, even when the whispers seemed loud enough to echo. But the more she listened, the more she understood. It wasn't just one voice. It was many, layered, pleading. "Help me. I'm still here. She hears us." She began to reply, quietly at first, asking who they were, why they were here, what they wanted. And every time, silence. But something changed after the fourth night. She found her name etched faintly on the inside of the bathroom mirror, visible only when it fogged after a shower. Laura, scratched in looping childlike letters. Mark said she was imagining things, but when she asked him to look, the fog had already faded. She left the mirror fogged the next day. When she returned, it read, "Stay with us." One evening, Mark didn't come home from work. She waited, called, texted, nothing. Then, hours later, his phone pinged her. From inside the house. Laura ran upstairs. His coat was on the banister, his shoes at the door, but no sign of Mark. Only the vent in their bedroom hissing softly. She approached it with trembling steps. A voice whispered, "He's with us now." Her knees buckled. She tore the house apart, opened every cabinet, every crawl space, even the attic they had never touched. She called the police. They found nothing. His car was still in the driveway. The police came. They searched the house top to bottom. Nothing. No forced entry. No evidence. No Mark. Laura was questioned for hours. Her recordings dismissed. Her sleeplessness noted. A psychologist was recommended. But Laura didn't need therapy. She needed answers. That night she took a flashlight and unscrewed the grate of the vent. Dust, cobwebs, and beyond, darkness. The duct seemed impossibly deep, too deep, like a throat swallowing light. Still, she reached in, hand trembling, and touched something. Flesh. It pulsed. She yanked her arm back, screaming. Blood painted her wrist, but there was no wound. The blood wasn't hers. She screamed for help. A neighbor came, but when they looked into the vent, nothing. Clean, dry, normal. Laura couldn't take it anymore. She packed a bag, ready to leave. As she stepped out, she heard it, all around her, in the walls, under the floors, through the vents. Don't leave. You're one of us now. She dropped the bag. That night, she found Mark's watch sitting on her pillow. She now walks the halls at night, whispering back. Visitors say they hear voices when they come by. Faint, sad, sometimes angry. The house has gone back on the market, unlisted, then listed again, discounted. No one stays long. The neighbors don't talk about the woman who lives there. They say she talks to the walls, that her husband ran off, that she was never quite right. But sometimes, late at night, if you walk past 324 Elridge Lane, you'll hear it too. A whisper, just behind the siding, asking if you're alone. Sometimes they answer back,